All right, welcome to Metropole Television. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiege. Yes, we have a fantastic panel for you this morning. And as you can hear, we are debating off air. This is a good thing. Now they know that we're going on air. Good. Let's therefore look at our economic review this morning. And I want us to start from an area that we have spoken about this week and has been occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, deeper shortfall in tax receipts than earlier projected by the Treasury has now prompted CS Ukuri to raise domestic borrowing for the current financial year, which started in July by 29.72 billion. In a Gazette notice issued Friday last week, the Treasury indicated that it was targeting 524.69 billion in domestic debt, which represented 6% more than the 494.98 billion it had estimated at the beginning of the financial year in July. Now, this has been explained by the Treasury CS as collections stemming from the Kenya Revenue Authority, which fell by 15.03%, that is 33.27 billion shillings in the first 2 months of this fiscal year to 188.08 billion. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic already forced the Treasury to cut tax collection forecast for this financial year, ending June 2021 by 91.2 billion to 1.42 trillion, compared to this earlier estimates over 1.51 trillion in June. Now, a recent parliamentary report also indicates that Kenya's debt is estimated to rise by 750 billion for the next 10 months, which will be equivalent to 2.6 billion in public debt, laying fears that the COVID-19 pandemic will see a jump in debt to 7.5 trillion by June next year, with a 15% jump in debt already recorded from last year's debt level. Good. Collins, debt, and more debt. What does this mean for the country, Collins, since we're talking about, again, another jump in that domestic borrowing ceiling? But before you answer that, Collins, Ukuri Yatani says, guys, look, Kenya has never defaulted on any of its loans, and it doesn't expect that we're going to for the very first time.
Okay, thank you, Charles, for having me. I acknowledge we have not defaulted yet, but I think this time around we're going to default. But even before getting into the issue of defaulting, let me just talk about the issue of our debt in Kenya. And I take you to 2014 when CS Rotich approaches Parliament and tells Parliament we need to move the debt ceiling, we need to double the debt ceiling to 2.4 trillion. And his argument is that we need to join as a country the big league, where countries are spending on their roads, on their rails, on the port, and all that. And Parliament granted his wish, and so we doubled the debt ceiling to 2.4 trillion. To 2019, a new man comes into office in an acting capacity, CS Ukuri Yatani, and he says, you know what, Parliament, we need to move this 2.4 trillion to 9 trillion. And his argument, the very same one, but then this time around he says we've exhausted all the scope for raising taxes, and so we need to borrow. And he equally goes ahead, and I remember we had this discussion that time, and he says that Kenyans cannot even understand some of the terms that are used in debt. His wishes were granted by Parliament then, and Parliament moved the debt ceiling to 9 trillion. That is the kind of laxity that we've given Parliament, and we've given the national government, that they can borrow as much as they want, and they've gone to do that. And I think next year, or even the next regime of government that will be coming into office, they need to push that debt ceiling from 9 trillion to something else, because at the moment we are getting even beyond 7 trillion in regards to our borrowing. We've been borrowing because of our ever expansionary budget. We've been borrowing because we've fallen short of our budget. We've been borrowing because of corruption, and it's about time now we see value for what we've been borrowing, because as it stands now, our debt is not secure at all. And you've seen IMF has issued a red flag to Kenya and said how you're proceeding, it's not safe. But then they've gone ahead to keep giving us money when we've borrowed. And so it beats logic in my end, how I see it. But now I think it's time we come up with a policy on how we are borrowing. We come up with a policy on where the money we are borrowing is being pumped into. And it's about time now we see results from what we are borrowing into. The big infrastructure developments and the grandiose projects that this government has been investing in, we are yet to see their products. If SGR is anything that they are talking about, SGR is more of a loss than of a profit to us.
All right, Collins, just before I let you go on this issue this morning, I want to exactly give you the numbers this morning at that parliamentary report that was tabled in the House. Now, they're saying that if we continue going like this, it means that our national debt is projected to increase by 750 billion in the next 10 months, which is equivalent to 2.6 billion a day. All right. Now, latest parliamentary report also shows that debt will jump to 7.5 trillion by June next year. But I want to take you back to where we were June last year. Is that up to now, we've already experienced a 15% increase in our debt level. But I want to ask you, Collins, I mean, if yes, it's going to go all the way to 7.5 trillion by June next year, does that mean that whoever is coming in as the president will have it really rough? What next? Because our debt ceiling was said, well, we can't touch 9 trillion. It looks as if 9 trillion will just be 1 trillion away.
I agree. And as I was saying, it will need that the next regime, they'll have to push this limit. But a very interesting thing to look at insofar as our debt is concerned, I think last year we were at around 400 something billion. And that, out of that amount, it's only partly, I think, 130 something billion that was going towards paying the principal debts. The rest of the 300 billion was going towards the interest. I think it's about time now we talk about the people who are lending to us, the kind of interest that they're imposing or the debts that they're giving us. And I think it's time we have a conversation about restructuring and about renegotiation on how those interests are being imposed on us. Because I think we are having a lot of exorbitant interest on some little amount of money. Is it, I don't know if it's about desperation on our end or is about the kind of facilities that we are borrowing from, because the kind of interest rate that we are paying are so much exorbitant.
Yes. Collins, let's put a spotlight on KRA, because if you saw, they're supposed to fund a bigger chunk of our budget this year. I mean, if yes, in the first 2 months of the new fiscal year, we've seen misses. I mean, what are they going to do to make sure that they can actually hit their targets? Collins, in just 2 minutes, if you may, sir.
And I agree. For the longest time, KRA has been unable to meet their targets. And I think it's about time now they think about how they're going with this. It's not about threats and about imposing, I don't know, saying if you fail to file your taxes, these and these are the repercussions that are going to get into you. I think, and I've said this before, it's about time KRA sits down and look at itself. How comes they've never met their target? Is it that they're so much of ambitious and they're not aware of what the abilities of the common market is? Or is it that they are so off the mark with regards to their calculations, or that their projections are always right and Kenyans are the ones that are lazy? I think it's about time they restructure and look at a way in which they are going to nab this. But I allowed them. I've seen now they've moved into digital market taxing, and they want to get into that space. But if that is going to get them anything, we are yet to see that. But I think I agree. It's about time KRA looks at the structures that they're netting with our taxes, because they've been falling off the mark always. And then we can always have a conversation on whether we need it in the first place to give us those projections.
Pretty much. Collins, thank you very much for joining us this morning, sir. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's move on to the next issue that we have for you this morning, where local insurance firms can now breathe a sigh of relief, if you may, after the Treasury eased the capital adequacy requirements for the 6 months between July and December this year as a way to cushion the sector from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the move was informed by how Kenyans are now unable to keep up with regular premium payments, with the sector facing high claims as a result of the effects of the pandemic on the economy, which will see general insurance companies needing a minimum capital of 600 million shillings, while life insurers are supposed to hold a minimum of 400 million shillings. Now, the Sector Act needs insurers to maintain the ratio at 100%, while insurers carrying on both long-term and general insurance businesses are supposed to maintain separate adequacy ratios. All right, now to help us therefore dig deeper into this issue this morning, we are joined by Washington Dagam. He is the chairman, Bima Intermediaries Association of Kenya. We also have Anthony Mwangi, Vice Chair, Association of Insurance Brokers of Kenya. Also joining us this morning, we do have Adelaide Odhiambo. She is the CEO, Blue Water Insurance. Let me begin with you, Anthony, this morning. Can we understand this latest announcement by Treasury? What does it mean for anybody listening to you this morning?
Good. First of all, let me say thank you very much for having me this morning and my colleagues. I think we need to understand this from the background of where we are and the times that we are in now. It's very critical that the ministry, especially from the Treasury, they definitely needed to come to the aid of the insurance fraternity. We all know that just like any other businesses, for instance, our business is mostly affected because it relies on other businesses. I mean, we insure other businesses. So when they are not working, when everybody else is crying, they are closing down, they are doing everything not in business, then it means it's definitely going to affect the insurance companies. So obviously then the Treasury would definitely have come in, and they came in to help cushion the insurance companies from the liquidity issues that they would suffer. Because if this was not done and we proceed with the ratios that the Act requires them to maintain, there will have been serious cash. They need to amend that the shareholders would have to either pump in money, or we find some mergers and acquisitions that are not necessary, eroding the shareholders' value in their businesses. So I think it was timely. So I would say yes, in the background of what COVID has presented to the insurance industry.
Pretty much, Anthony, I'll be coming back to you on whether we should celebrate or not, because a lot of issues actually we want to lay bare around the regulatory environment of your sector this morning amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Adelaide, I want to bring you in as well so you can weigh in on this issue. Is it reason for us to celebrate or more was needed? Because we're only talking about July now to December.
I think it's too early to celebrate. I think certainly not even time to celebrate at all. There's time to really deep down and dig deep and see that there's a lot of stability within the economy on the insurance side. So firstly, if you're looking at the capital requirements for the insurance companies, because of the impact of COVID, you're finding that most organizations are unable to meet their financial obligations to continue creating revenue. And in that, you find that there's less liquidity within these firms. With less liquidity, there's a big strain on reserves. And if there's a big strain on reserves, then you find that most of these organizations will be struggling to meet their obligations, as my colleague Anthony has mentioned. So you'd also find a secondary avalanche on the consumer side, where most of them are already losing jobs. And by losing jobs, you're finding that there'll be a big struggle to meet the day-to-day demands. And yes, the government has done well to reduce the tax impact on income, but still it may not be significant, because if you have no job, a reduction in tax is completely nothing. So we are seeing if this continues with a high rise in debt, inflation could be looming close by, and if it's looming, then it becomes a big challenge for the economy. So we cannot celebrate. We have to analyze, reanalyze, and ensure that we stand on our 2 feet and ensure that the economy is still stable. And remember, insurance only contributes less than 3% of GDP. So the impact on GDP on the insurance side is quite minimal.
Pretty much. Adelaide, you can say good morning to the angel who's just monitoring you right behind there. As I bring Washington to also weigh in on this. Washington, well, another issue that has been mentioned is that now anybody taking a policy now, as we do know of it in your sector, is negotiating beyond negotiating in terms of how much they are able to pay now has been heavily reduced. Can you confirm that? For us, therefore, to say, well, this announcement from the Treasury came at the right moment.
Is it for Washington or mine?
Washington, can you get me?
Yeah, I didn't get. I thought you were asking something else.
Oh, yeah, that was your question. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Washington,
Yes.
the question is now is that there's also the understanding from Treasury that anybody who's going to take a policy right now within the COVID-19 pandemic is not going for a premium price. Is that whatever they're asking to buy these policies for is at the totally reduced price. Is that true when you compare pre-COVID and with the premiums that you're getting during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, what we are getting is this. Well, I don't think we've really reached that level of actually negotiating for lower premium, so to speak, because anyway, on the renewal of our policy, we always expect what you call NCD, non-claims discount. I mean, because of what you experienced the previous period. You don't expect someone, for example, who had a claim the previous period, and because of COVID-19, now they want a different premium, so to speak. So to a certain extent, we are not seeing a really of that. But what is happening is that it might have come to that. It might come to that, so to speak, because the economy has been hard hit, as we've heard from my colleagues. The amount to pay and the amount to pay for premiums, let's say, is not actually there because what we have is our clients, the populace in Kenya does not really believe in insurance. So insurance is more of like a luxury. So you find someone, it's easy actually to default on totally default on premium payments than even negotiating. Because you see, at the same time, even this company that you're telling to negotiate downwards for, it hasn't gotten enough premiums. It cannot afford to do that, So what you're going to find is either you downgrade the kind of cover that you have, or maybe you stop paying for your cover altogether. But at the end of the day, it's all about the economy. If the economy improves, of course, even the insurance industry improves on its premium collection. If the economy does not improve, we expect the opposite. But at the end of the day, the insurance sector has been hard hit. And the only thing that can save us is the improvement of the economy. Let me say that.
Pretty much. All right. I would like us to take a little break, but once we come back, Anthony, now the question is going to be, does this therefore open a floor for a deeper discussion on the regulatory front in the sector, like IFRS accounting formula and also the risk-based model that was supposed to take effect as from July this year? Is it time for us to talk about it from the regulator perspective, or we celebrate what the Treasury has done and then hope that next year things are going to look up in the sector once we come back shortly?